Millennium, the Seventh Day by Bonck. Chapter 12, Petra, the Mission. 200 years have passed after finding his father's copy of the Book of Journals made by the news crew. Ben Adiel, son of Gus Hubbard, has become an Enoshi law enforcement officer, just like his father. He has moved up in the Lord's service and is a devout Christian. David's half-brothers, from his mother's side, have on several occasions attempted to learn the status of any attempts to recover the equipment in Petra. David's mother has been interrogated by her sons. No one is sure how they learned about the equipment, but it must have been a slip by Vera or Gus at some time in the past. The idea that they are still asking about the equipment and any possible attempt to recover it means that whoever stole the books is still looking to stop any recovery. It has been a topic of prayer that Vera will not give in to her sons and give them the information. Evidently, the brothers do not know that there is a sixth book. Shortly after bringing the sixth book to Sean's grandson, John, a meeting was held at a secret location to plan an expedition to Petra for the recovery. The meeting included Thomas Taylor, the saint that was at Petra at the same time as the evacuation. His contributions will be valuable to their success. They decided that their first action will be a trip to see the situation at Petra's entrance, see what it is, and to see if it is guarded. John has a group of 6 of his great-great-grandsons to come with them on the expedition when the recovery is attempted. David saw John's son come into the room and stood up to greet them. He smiled and commented, "These men are not only devout, but they are stout. I'm glad to see they are on our side." One of the problems with the expedition is transportation. While Thomas Taylor can disappear and just show up in another location, and no one knows how he got there or where else he went while he was gone, John and his men must travel by foot or horseback. David has his connections for using Ophons. This is because of his law enforcement requirements. It is decided that John and his men will travel in Ophons as well, as directed by David, and stagger their travel times to make it hard to associate their travel with each other. Their travel will appear to be part of a law enforcement activity. A location just outside the old entrance to Petra is chosen for the group to rendezvous. They can all wait to appear. Hide out at that coordinate until there's no one around. This is because the Ophanim can cloak their appearance. This includes their passengers. As it is, there's no one around. The area is a perfectly green location. There are fields of fruit and olive trees, and after 1,000 years of rainfall and love and care from the farmers, the land is blooming like a rose. The rock face, where the entrance used to be, is completely backfilled and overgrown. It was instantly obvious that there is no way into Petra through the old canyon. They begin to consider other ways to get into the fortress. They decide to go over the cliffs and go down inside and look for a way out from the inside. They all load into the Ophon and travel to the back side of the cliffs. When they come down, they can hardly determine exactly where they are. Their first task is to find the old Sikh entrance. It takes hours, but they finally found the location they think is it. Only remnants of it still exist. Part of the problem within Petra is that there is now some water in the bottom of the basin. This makes some of the landmarks, as indicated in the journals, difficult or impossible to find. One of John's grandsons asked the question, how's the water getting out of the basin? Where is it going? The group all start following the flow of the water. They finally walk around a large boulder in the bottom of the basin, and there it is. The old Nabatean drain tunnel that was hewn through the rock wall. It was made in ancient times to provide a secondary path for floodwaters, and it is still there, partially filled with some fallen rock and washed in sand. The group takes a little time to look at the area within Petra, which is believed to have the equipment tunnel location. They are somewhat encouraged because the area is not underwater or disturbed like many of the other areas. Before leaving the Petra area, they search for the external exit of the emergency water tunnel outside Petra. They find it slightly northeast of the original entrance. It is hidden back against the rock wall, covered by bush and trees. It appears as a very small spring flowing from the rocks. It does not appear like anyone is aware of the tunnel or using the immediate area. They all agree that another trip to the site with tools to attempt to open the drain tunnel should happen as soon as everyone can schedule it. The team agrees that the northern leadership people should be on hand when the equipment is recovered. They must be able to come into Petra and remove the equipment without any help from saints or Ophons. They would not believe that the equipment and the data was real if they didn't find it themselves. This is risky because there are no guarantees that the equipment can be found or that it is still operable. After all, it's been over 1,000 years. It's been 3 months since the first trip to Petra. The expedition team is assembled just north of Jerusalem, and they load into an Ophon for the trip south to Petra. This time they go directly inside of Petra at the emergency flood tunnel. They are all carrying hand tools to clear the tunnel, shovels, picks, hose. They begin to work on all the sand first. Then they work on breaking the larger rocks which are fallen from the ceiling and carry them out. The expedition has traveled in Petra early in the morning and worked all day. They estimate there are about 80% done through the tunnel when they finally stop for the day. They then go to look around the area where the hidden equipment chamber might be. They are shocked to find that someone else has been digging in the rock entrances of many of the old tombs. It does not appear that anything had been found or removed. The recollection of Thomas Taylor is that everything in the hideaways, which were used by the 144,000 Jews, were destroyed as part of God's cleansing. The tunnel that the news crew used is a location deeper into Petra. This is because the crew came so late in the 3.5 years. He doesn't remember the equipment being destroyed. He feels that there is a chance that it's still there. He's not sure that anything will still operate, even if it's found. 1,000 years is a long time. The expedition sets up camp for the night at a location near the flood tunnel. They begin to speculate as to who has been in Petra. Whoever it is, they somehow manage to find their way in, but how? The next day, the crew manages to finish their digging out of the water tunnel and to allow it to drain more completely than it has been. They are careful not to cause any interest from outside the tunnel by making a mess. They can now enter and exit Petra on foot and also carry equipment in and out. They stash the tools inside Petra and reluctantly go home. The mission will now become more political. They must convince a group of northern leadership to come to Petra with them. This could take some time. John, as a senior elder of the clan Wright, has many contacts with the leaders of the other clans, tribes. He has a feel from the many conferences and committee who shares his view and who don't. He must approach those who don't believe that Jesus has been faithful about his origins and nature and see if they are so entrenched in their position that they cannot be swayed by the truth. No one in the expedition has seen any of the Petra evidence. They are accepting their parents' testimony as true. Only Thomas Taylor actually knows what to expect, and he is a saint and is considered by the northern leaders to be an enemy and not to be at all trustworthy. It has become obvious that the settlements and tribes from all over the world have become so tainted concerning Jesus and his government that a civil war seems to be the only possible outcome. It's only a matter of time. Insurrection is being pushed by people like Azazel, who are preaching hatred. John has contacted a number of officials and leaders of the clans. He has managed to set up a meeting at a neutral location just north of the Wright estates, John's home. This meeting is the 8th time that the meeting has been scheduled and then changed. Emergencies seem to keep coming up to stop the meeting. It's clear that the project has opposition, but John, who is now nearly 1,000 years old, and his grandsons are determined to make it happen. John and his grandson set out on horseback and carriages to go to the meeting. It's still a 2-day journey. While they are yet 20 miles from the location, they are traveling down the road and find a roadblock. The men at the roadblock inform John that there's a plague in the area and they cannot go any further. You must turn around now. John explains that they must pass and that it is important that they make it to this meeting. The men of the roadblock become angry and begin to force John's group backwards. John explains that this group is immune to the plague and they must pass. The men are now shouting anti-Christian slurs and cursing at John's group. The grandsons won't take this without a fight. They remount their horses and pull out their pikes. Just as it seems that violence will ensue, a group of Inashi law enforcement men emerge from the forest on each side of the road. There are also 2 Ophons now hovering overhead. The conflict is over before it began. The men at the roadblock are arrested and the roadblock destroyed, not just taken apart, dissolved. David steps out of one of the Ophons and greets John. He assures him that there is no plague in this area and there are no other roadblocks between them and their destination. John looked very relieved, smiled at David, and said, "I should have known you would have our backs." They proceeded to the meeting, and there are 8 northern clans represented. While the meeting was reasonably civil, the tension was heavy, and the leaders showed no trust in the expedition. They generally felt it was a trap to expose them to the Jerusalem government by having them travel through Israel and Jerusalem without going to the temple. John kept going back to the threat and the realities of war. Do you really want to see your families decimated? Do you really want to make killers out of your children? Is it not worth a trial to stop the war? A war which may be based on lies? If Jesus is who he says, then you're in grave danger. In the end, 3 of the 8 leaders agree to join the expedition. Each leader will have 2 bodyguards, for a total of 9 additional members. The grandsons of John will go early by Ophon with David, but everyone else will ride in wagons or on horseback. The expedition will be scheduled for 7 days at the site, with the possibility of more time if agreed on by everyone. There's one caveat that came out of the meeting. The leaders only agreed to go if Azazel, the singer, could come with them. They felt that because he is so central to the opposition movement, that if he was not included, no one could believe the outcome. Azazel has his own travel network and would come and go by his own means, so he is not included in the travel plans. John reluctantly agreed, so long as the expedition could start immediately without delay. Everyone agreed, and the coordinates were supplied for Azazel to rendezvous with them at Petra. The expedition starts at a location just slightly north of where the old Syrian city of Aleppo would be if it still existed. They travel almost directly south, which brings them just east of the Lebanon mountain range and west of the old location of Damascus. They stay on the high country to the east of Jerusalem and the Dead Sea. This path would have been previously nearly impassable, except since the rains have come all over the area, it has been revived and cultivated, and now there are roads going along that ridge and descending down into the Petra area. This path was chosen to keep them as far from Jerusalem as possible without completely circling around. It has taken nearly a week to get to Petra. They actually arrive late in the evening and decide to go inside in the morning, besides Azazel has not shown up yet. In the morning, these men agree to go into the stronghold and begin searching. They will leave several men behind outside the tunnel to wait for Azazel, and then to remain and guard the entrance from any interference from outside. The water tunnel is quite large in diameter and can accommodate horses with packs. Once inside the stronghold, the expedition recovers the digging tools left behind by the previous visit. They proceed along the north edge of the basin for about 2 miles, skirting the water in the bottom. The water level has dropped by several feet. Since the tunnel has been cleaned out, the tunnel itself is now dry, only wet, moist sand in the bottom. Once they reach the original canyon entrance, they start backtracking the directions given by the news team in their journals. It might seem that retracing track would be a simple task. The news crew were detail-oriented people, professionals. They were continually asking questions, making observations of everything around them, especially Sally, who was a photographer. She analyzed everything she saw and determined if it was important or if it would make a great photo. She would even wait in one place for the light to change to make her photo better. Sally's details have been washed away by 1,000 years of erosion from wind and water. However, she often would describe a setting by the large rock features all around it. It would describe the folds in the rock and the layering of the cliffs. These larger features have not been destroyed by time. Even though they are made of sandstone, they are still there. The expedition decided to wait for a while to see if Azazel shows, and to allow him some time to catch up to them back at the entrance. Azazel has just walked up from nowhere. The horses were startled as he passed between them. One horse literally jumped back 10 feet to the side and looked at Azazel, who turned and looked at the horse. When he saw the horse staring at him, he said, "What are you looking at?" The horse said, "I don't know." There were also some birds in the bushes nearby, and one of the birds said, "I don't know either, but it's not human." Before Azazel could do anything, the horse turned and ran into the field, yelling, "Run, run, run!" The entrance guards came running and asked Azazel what just happened, and Azazel said, "That horse can talk." The guards just said, "Yes, of course, all animals can talk." Then they asked him to come with them. "And the others are waiting for you inside Petra." And as they lead Azazel into Petra, he looks perplexed by what just happened. Animals could not talk when he was placed in prison. He is trying to remember why the horse's voice sounds so familiar. They soon come to the expedition near the old entrance and join the others. They begin moving northeast towards the area indicated in the news crew. Azazel determines that he is going to be as disruptive as possible. He is constantly making snide comments about John's grandsons and how dishonest the news crew had been about the past. He makes fun of the whole expedition and how it is a waste of time, and if they can't find the equipment right away, that he's leaving. The representatives from the northern settlements are embarrassed by the conduct of Azazel, and they try to get him to back off. They even take him aside to talk to him, but to no avail. At one point, Azazel points to something on the rocks and insists that the expedition turn aside and investigate the area. And of course, there's nothing there. John's grandsons know how important this expedition is and are determined to endure any and all insults to see it through. David is with the expedition, but not wearing any uniform or indicating in any way that he is an Anashi law enforcement officer. He has spent hundreds of years studying every detail written in the journals and every drawing and diagram made by all the members of the crew. He feels like he could go through the site blindfolded. He is confident he can find the location. After hours of searching, the group stops for a lunch break. David asks if he could go on his own and continue searching. He is given leave, but told not to go too far without checking in. After about 30 minutes, David comes back and asks for some lunch. And all the younger men tease him about not being able to skip lunch. After eating for just a little while, David takes John to the side and tells him that he had found the site and would show them after lunch. John can only look at David and marvel because he was able to control his emotions. John asks, "Are you sure?" David responds, "Yes, but there will be a lot of digging, mostly soft sand washed down from above. If we work hard, we'll be in today." The expedition packs up and continues. They are told to follow David, and of course, Azazel refuses to comply and is wandering around on his own, although not too far away. After about 20 minutes, David stops and asks the representatives to come to him. He removes a drawing made by Sally from his vest pocket, unfolds it, and holds it up in front of everyone and points to the rock formation in front of them. The rocks are exactly the same as the drawing. Sally had shown the tunnel entrance on the drawing, that it was approximately 100 feet from where she was making the drawing, and had even drawn an arrow to point out the location. The representatives all got excited and called for Azazel, "Come and see." He reluctantly came to look. He was obviously angry and simply said, "I'll believe it when I see it." 6 of the young men began to organize to dig the colluvian wash sand and stones away from the entrance. While they were working, the rest of the expedition went about building a campsite for that night. David calls 3 of the bodyguards for the representatives over to him to talk to them discreetly. He tells them that there was an incident at the entrance of Petra with the horses, and that the horses swear that there is something wrong with Azazel. We don't know what it is, but don't let him get close to your representatives. We won't know what it means, but you can't be too careful. Then David says, "My father is Gus Hubbard, one of the news crew, and that's why I'm here." One of the guards responds, "Adiel was your father?" "He was Ellie, wasn't he?" Ellie stands for Anashi Law Enforcement. David replies, "Yes, he was, and so am I." The guards just say, "Thank you for the tip." David was right when he said there's a lot of digging needed to be done to open the enclosure. The diggers first had to shovel it up and throw it backwards out of the hole, and then someone else would come and shovel the dirt to the left or to the right. This opens up the area and will allow direct access to the enclosure. The diggers have been working for hours, nonstop, and now going to be spelled by others in the expedition. The first shift of diggers has moved nearly 5 yards of material from in front of the wall. The second shift has been digging for about an hour when one of them shouts, "There's a doorway." As they continued digging, it became clear that the opening in the rock was about 6 feet high, 5 feet wide. This is precisely the size given by the journals. Everyone, except Azazel, is excited to think that they are about to open the enclosure. It's looking like an Egyptian tomb, and wondering, is there a mummy inside? The diggers get to a point where they can begin to look inside. They reflect a light back into the chamber, and one of the diggers calls back and he says, "There's nothing in here. I don't see anything." No sooner than he had said that, Azazel shouts out, "You fool! You are all duped fools. What a waste of time. Then John shouts, "Wait a minute." And he leans over to the man looking into the chamber and tells him to crawl in for about 8 feet and then look to the left. The man did what he was told and crawled in. Then he called out, "It's here. There's a lot of stuff in here." They brought the man out and resumed digging out the chamber so they can remove all of the equipment. The next 2 hours was spent removing the equipment and inventorying the contents. Everyone is amazed how many cases there are. Each case is a road case, which means it is weatherproof and completely sealed. The equipment inside is too valuable to get damaged by travel. All contents are being compared to the inventory provided by the news crew. They find that each item they find is in their own manufacturer's case and then placed inside the equipment carrying case and then placed with other equipment in the sealed road cases. As a result, the contents look absolutely perfect, like they were used yesterday, not even dusty. They had also packed all of the manufacturer's operating manuals and troubleshooting documents, along with the equipment. Even the batteries had been removed from the equipment and stored separately. They too were not damaged. The solar and manual battery chargers have been located as well. The inventory and recovery from the chamber exceeds everyone's expectation. The excitement is amazing. They can't wait to get into the laptop computers to see the files. Azazel is standing a way off, watching what is happening. Realizing that he can't allow this information to get out, he comes to the conclusion that he must stop the northern representatives from ever leaving Petra. He figures he can make a cover story on how they were killed by the others in the expedition when the chamber was found empty. He will kill the leaders and disappear as quickly as possible and make his way north. He knows that the guards will try and stop him, so he will need to become himself and catch them off guard or startle them by transforming himself. The representatives are very impressed by the equipment and beginning to get into the excitement of the event. Azazel begins to walk up to them as though he would talk to them. But before he could get close, the guards step in front of him and ask him to step back. Azazel was angered. He triggered his response by transforming right in front of them. But they didn't even flinch. They instead took defensive actions and told the representatives to hit the deck, which they did. Hillel, Lucifer, managed to hit one of the guards with a hard blow, but the other guards stepped up and began to beat Hillel with their weapons and swords, and it was like a pack of dogs, fearless, and too many for Hillel to defeat. He pulled his wings in and disappeared into the sky. David ran into the bushes near the water's edge and called to some birds, gave them directions, and sent them away. The birds flew towards the entrance to Petra like they were shot out of a cannon. David had sent them to the entrance guards to warn them that Lucifer is in the area and may try to harm them. Also, the birds are to contact Eli and give them the code word witness. They will know what to do. David approaches the representatives and tells them that he has sent for help from Eli. that if they wish, they can all be evacuated to a safe location in Jerusalem, where they can review and analyze all the equipment and data from the site. The representatives reluctantly agree. They realize that if it had not been for David's warning to the bodyguards, that it probably saved their life. They also want the injured guard to get treatment. Within 5 minutes, there is a small fleet of Ophanim hovering overhead, picking up people and equipment as fast as they can. No one and nothing is left behind. They are all taken to a secure location within Jerusalem. Everybody in the expedition is in isolation at this secret place. They will remain there until the data can be assessed and a direction forward determined. End of chapter 12.